I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories. If you asked me a year ago, I would have told you I had my whole future planned, steady job, stable home, and a woman I thought I loved enough to spend forever with. But now I'm sitting here, staring at the walls of our apartment while she sleeps in the other room, her hand draped protectively over her growing stomach, and all I can think about is running. Here is the part that makes me look like the villain. Yes, she's pregnant. Yes, the baby is mine. But what people don't know, what no one sees behind the curated photos and her sweet smile is the way everything started unraveling months before we even knew she was expecting. It began with little lies. Late nights at work that didn't make sense. Messages on her phone she flipped over when I walked into the room. The smell of cologne that wasn't mine lingering on her jacket one night when she came home tipsy and giggling. When I asked her about it, she laughed and told me I was paranoid, insecure, making up stories in my head. But then came the betrayal I couldn't ignore. A friend of mine, someone who had no reason to lie, pulled me aside one evening and confessed had seen her at a bar, not once but multiple times, cozied up with another man. Maybe it's innocent, he said, but it didn't look that way. I confronted her again, and again she denied it. She cried, swore she'd never do something like that, called me cruel for even suggesting it. And like a fool, I let myself believe her. Then, 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test came back positive. At first, I was numb. Then, I was hopeful. Maybe, I told myself, this was our fresh start. Maybe a baby could bring us closer, force us to build something real, something uncheckable. I clung to that hope like a drowning man clings to driftwood. But it didn't take long for the cracks to widen. She started using the pregnancy as both a shield and a weapon. Anytime I tried to raise concerns about her secretive texts, about the nights she still slipped away to see friends, she'd snap back. How dare you stress me out while I'm carrying your child? And then came the night I'll never forget. I woke up around midnight to find her gone. No note, no text, just an empty bed. I waited until 3 a.m. before she finally came stumbling back in, smelling of alcohol and cigarette smoke. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't start. I'm too tired." Then she collapsed into bed like nothing had happened. That was the night something inside me broke. Since then, I've been living in this twisted limbo, half partner, half prisoner. She dangles the pregnancy over my head like a chain. If I leave, I'm abandoning her. If I stay, I'm betraying myself. And here is the worst part. I don't even know if this baby is mine. I want to believe it. God, I want to. But deep down, there's this gnawing voice that won't shut up, whispering that I might be building my life around a child conceived during one of her nights out. I haven't told her yet. I haven't told anyone. But every day, the thought grows louder, heavier. I want to leave. And that's why I'm here, spilling this to strangers. Because the world will see a man leaving his pregnant woman and immediately brand me a monster. But I know the truth. I've been living with the betrayal, the doubt, the manipulation. I just don't know if walking away makes me the whole or finally free. The thought of leaving gnawed at me constantly, but guilt kept me anchored. Every time I looked at her belly, I thought, what if it really is mine? What kind of man abandons his child before it's even born? But then, every time I looked into her eyes, all I saw were the lies. One evening, I suggested counseling. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we had a mediator, I could get answers or at least clarity. She laughed in my face. Counseling? For what? Because you don't trust me. You're the one with issues, not me. Her words sliced deeper than she realized. Not once had she acknowledged my pain, my doubts, my fears. Everything was always flipped back onto me, as if I were the broken one for even noticing the cracks in our relationship. That night, after she fell asleep, I couldn't stop myself. I picked up her phone. I'd never done it before, even though I had wanted to 100 times. My hands shook as I typed in the passcode I'd guessed months ago. What I found made me sick. There were messages, hundreds of them, with a contact saved only as J. Some were vague, but many were explicit, detailing nights together, jokes about me, even discussions of the pregnancy. One message in particular gutted me. Don't worry, babe. Even if it's his, you know he'll treat it like mine. I felt the air leave my lungs. My knees went weak. She'd been stringing me along while carrying on an entire relationship behind my back. The next morning, I confronted her, shaking with anger. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I simply showed her the screen. For a moment, she looked terrified. Then, in an instant, her face hardened. So what? She said. You think you're some saint. You were already looking for reasons to leave. At least he cares about me. Her words were a slap harder than any fist. I realized then that she hadn't just betrayed me, she had no remorse, no shame. She had already chosen him. I walked out. For days, I stayed at a friend's place, ignoring her calls, her angry voicemails alternating with tearful ones. But something inside me wouldn't let go. I needed the truth not just for me, but for the life she was carrying. I ordered a prenatal paternity test, something I hadn't even known existed until desperation drove me to Google it. The results came back 2 weeks later. My heart pounded as I opened the envelope. The baby wasn't mine. The world tilted. A mix of rage, relief, and heartbreak surged through me. Rage because she had used me as a safety net. Relief because I wasn't bound forever to someone so deceitful. Heartbreak because for weeks I had pictured myself holding that child, despite my doubts, despite everything. When I told her I knew, she didn't even try to deny it. She just cried, begging me to stay anyway, promising we could raise it together. But that was the final betrayal. She hadn't just cheated. She had tried to steal my future, my choice, my trust. I told her it was over, that she needed to figure out her life with Jay because I was done being the fool. Her final words to me before I walked out for good were venomous. You'll regret this. No one will ever love you like I did. Maybe she was right. But as I stepped into the night air, free for the first time in months, I realized something. Love built on lies isn't love at all. It's a prison. And I had finally found the courage to escape. For a while, I thought walking away would be the end of it. I imagined she would move on with Jay, raise the baby, and it'd finally be free of the mess. But I underestimated her. 2 months after I left, I got served. Court papers. She had filed for child support. At first, I thought it was some clerical mistake. After all, the DNA test had proven the baby wasn't mine. But buried in the paperwork was the truth. She hadn't submitted the test. She had filed as if we were still together, as if there was no question of paternity. I confronted her immediately. You know this isn't my child. Why are you doing this? She smiled a cold, almost satisfied smile. Because you walked out. Because you humiliated me. And because no one will ever believe you. Everyone thinks you're the guy who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend, and am the poor mother left behind. Her words chilled me. She didn't just want money. She wanted revenge. I hired a lawyer. The process was draining, expensive, humiliating. She fought dirty painting me as unstable, claiming I had control issues, even dragging out old arguments and twisting them into evidence of emotional abuse. Every time I stepped into that courtroom, it felt like I was drowning in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The DNA results saved me legally, but not socially. Friends I'd known for years started pulling away, whispering behind my back. Some outright told me they couldn't support a man who abandons his pregnant woman. She had poisoned the well, turning me into the villain in a story I hadn't written. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, she showed up at my apartment one night. She was holding the baby. He deserves a father, she said, tears streaming down her face. Please, just hold him. Look at him. Don't tell me you don't feel something. For a split second, I did. The baby's tiny fingers curled around mine, his dark eyes searching my face. Something inside me cracked. But then I remembered that text, even if it's his, you know he'll treat it like mine. And I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. No, I said firmly. He deserves a father who isn't tricked into the role. Go find the man you made him with. Her face twisted with fury. She spat venomous words, called me heartless, a coward, a monster. She even threatened to show up at my workplace, to tell everyone I was a deadbeat dad. And the terrifying part, I knew she'd do it. For weeks after, I lived in fear, checking over my shoulder, dreading every knock on the door. The betrayal hadn't ended when I left. It had evolved into a campaign of destruction. She wasn't content with losing me, she wanted to ruin me. But here is the strange part. In the middle of all that chaos, I found clarity. Her lies, her manipulation, her vengeance, they weren't about me. They were about her. About her inability to take responsibility, to live with the consequences of her choices. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something I hadn't in forever. Peace. Because the truth was finally undeniable. I wasn't the a-hole for wanting to leave. I was a survivor, clawing my way out of a cage built of betrayal. And though she still tried to chain me to her story, I had something stronger than her lies. The truth. And I wasn't going to let it go again.